Assalamu alaikum, Zainab. MashaAllah, look how beautiful you look today.
Walaikum salam, Auntie. Yeah, you like my scarf, right? It's really pretty, right? Love the colors and everything. My auntie gave it to me. So, she told me, that she wants me to now, inshallah, try and wear this all the time because I'm becoming a big girl now. And it's time to wear hijab, but it kind of feels a bit hard. I'm kind of scared. I don't know if I can do it. It looks like it's too big a thing for a little girl like me to try and do.
No, Zainab. In fact, it's just the perfect time for you to start trying. And mashallah, I'm so proud of you to start thinking of yourself as a big girl now. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows exactly why He gives us this command. It is something that we need to really think about and understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only wants what's good for us. I can understand though that it sometimes feels a bit daunting, a bit heavy, like you were saying, almost like a burden.
Burden? What do you mean burden? Is that like something that's heavy?
Yeah, well, the word burden means like when something is like a heavy load, yeah, and it makes the person who's carrying it feel stressed and overwhelmed and oppressed, and it feels like a very cumbersome load. But it doesn't always have to be a heavy thing that you're carrying. Sometimes something feels like a burden when it's a very light thing. Physically, it's a light thing, but emotionally, mentally, symbolically, it feels heavy. It feels like a burden. And so when hijab becomes a tricky thing for us, hard to do, feels like a heavy burden, we have to ask ourselves, does Allah want to burden us when He gives us a command? What do you think, Zainab?
Well, Allah loves us, and my mom always tells me Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is merciful. He doesn't hurt us. He doesn't want to give us difficult things. So, no, I don't think Allah likes to burden people. Astaghfirullah, that's against how nice He is. He's so kind and loving. And He forgives us, and He, even though we're so bad sometimes. So how can such a God who's so forgiving be burdening people with heavy things?
Absolutely. And Nabi Musa alayhi salam had asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala this question. He said, Allah, why do you test human beings? Why do you give them sickness? Why do you give them all these difficult things to do in life? Why do you, so to speak, burden people with difficult things in your life, in their lives? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replied, Oh Musa, tell my people, tell them I love them very much, and whatever I do for them is good for them. I would never do anything to hurt my creations.
That's so nice. So Allah doesn't want to burden us. You are absolutely right.
Yes, you are correct, and I agree with you. And in fact, in the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that in fact He wants to make light our burdens. See, what the real burden in life is our sins. Our sins weigh us down. And when we are weighed down with sins, Allah wants to make them light for us. Allah doesn't want us to get into more sins and become heavier. Therefore, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran that He wants to make light our burdens, it's showing that He understands what we need and what exactly He needs to take away to make our burden lighter. So let's look at this ayah from the Holy Quran. It's Surah 4, ayah 28.
الله أن يخفف عنكم وخلق الإنسان ضعيفا.
And Allah wants to lighten for you your difficulties, and mankind was created weak.
And basically Allah is telling us that He knows human beings are weak. He knows that they can't handle things and that they, get tired and stressed and exhausted. And so he's reassuring us that no, I'm trying to lighten your burden. I'm so nice. And you know what? Even if some things do feel difficult, for example, sometimes praying on time, even though we're very tired, or if we have traveled and now we finally get somewhere and we're finally able to pray after a long flight, but we still pray because we love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we want to make him happy. When we do that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very happy with us. So even though it might feel like a burden, we know we can do it when we put our mind to it, that we make time to pray, and we make time to pray on time. And no matter how tired we are, we can find time to pray, which means that we have learned how to handle something that felt like a burden and made it easier to handle. Let's look at this ayah from the Holy Quran. It's Surah Mu'minun, Surah 23, ayah 62, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that he does not give a soul a burden heavier than he can handle.
ولا نكلف نفسا إلا وسعها ولدينا كتاب ينطق بالحق وهم لا يظلمون.
And we charge no soul except with that within its capacity, and with us is a record which speaks with truth, and they will not be wronged.
So Zainab, it shows us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what we can handle. Like, I know that you are a little girl, and if I tell you to carry a whole refrigerator, would you be able to?
I can't carry a refrigerator, Auntie. That's silly. You know, a refrigerator is heavier than I am. There's no way on earth I could carry a refrigerator, but you're smarter than that. You would never give me a refrigerator to carry because you know what a little girl can carry.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I wanted to hear from you. And that's it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made us, and he knows what we can handle and what we cannot handle. So first thing we have to agree on and establish here is that it's us who consider hijab a burden, something heavy, something difficult. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in his infinite mercy and in his just nature, has not commanded it upon us to make it a burden for us. That's not his intention. It's because we think it's a burden. And then we have to ask ourselves, why do we think of hijab, us, as a burden? It's because we choose to see it as a burden. Have you ever made a sand castle, Zainab?
Oh yeah, it's so much fun. We gather all the sand and sometimes you need water, to make it like a mud kind of thing, like a not too wet and not too dry. And then you have to bring all these buckets of sand, and you need a few people to make a really nice castle. And sometimes I've seen some really big castles. Like I've seen entire families working on this big castle, and they, like it takes hours and hours. So see, we sometimes play and we spend hours and hours making a sandcastle, and sometimes to do a jigsaw puzzle, or sometimes to play make something out of Lego, which can be like a huge tower. But then we have to break it down, like we break the jigsaw puzzle later. Even the sandcastle, water comes over it and washes it all off, right? Yeah. All that. Sometimes people jump on their castle and they break it and they pour water over it. So yeah, all those hours of work just gone.
There you go. And when we worked on that castle or the jigsaw or the Lego, whatever fun thing we were playing with, did we think that was a burden?
No, it's fun. It was when we want to do something, we enjoy it, even if it takes time.
Exactly. So when we like something, we do it, even though it's hard work. Sometimes we're exhausted. Sometimes it takes us days, but we do it because we want to do it. And that's why when we want to do hijab, when we want to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's when we will not consider it hard. That's why you'll see sometimes when it's so hot and people are all sweating and people are wearing shorts and, really, really saying, oh my God, it's hot. And you'll see people wearing hijab and they're hot too, Zainab. But they do it because they love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're willing to handle the heat because it's for God that they're doing it for.
Yeah, sometimes I say to Mommy, aren't you hot in that? Like, that is so hot. Like, oh my God. And you know what he tells me? He says, well, the fire of hell will be hotter. I don't want to do anything to make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unhappy. I want to make him happy. And I'm willing to go through all this heat and all this difficulty because it makes Allah happy.
Beautiful. In the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that Qul inna salati wa nusuki wa mahyaya wa mamati lillahi rabbil alameen. And say to yourself, say it and believe it, that my prayer, my sacrifice, my life, my death are all for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Lord of the worlds. So when we do this, hijab, fasting, praying, giving charity, forgiving people, these are all sometimes difficult things to do. But we do it because we love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we dedicate it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Zainab, what does hijab mean to you? What does it stand for in your mind?
Well, it stands for being religious. It stands for making Allah happy. It stands for modesty, like not showing yourself, and it also, it stands for like listening to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and obeying him and loving him. You do it because you love God. So you do that's what hijab is.
There you go. That if we think that hijab is all those things, modesty and submission to God and devotion to him and piety and love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if we do all that if we believe all that and then we think hijab is a burden, that means we think all those things are bad, that they are a burden too. But they're not. Those are beautiful things and we like those things, right? So that's why we need to ask ourselves, what's holding me back? Why do I think that hijab is heavy and hard? I mean, it's just a light piece of cloth and we make it so hard to put it on our head. You know, often we worry that people are going to laugh at us. But sometimes I've seen people, you're wearing a purple scarf. I've seen people wear purple hair.
Yeah, I have seen green hair and pink hair. And some people, they shave all their heads on the side. Their only hair is sticking up here like a fountain. I think it's called a mohawk or something.
Yes.
And you know what? They wear these weird clothes. Sometimes these fashion shows you see when you're flicking through the channels, and they're wearing these weird things like pots on their head, and they're wearing like clothes that are all ripped and stuff, and they're wearing the weird clothes like they're wearing a cake on their head or something. It's so weird. Some of those hats, have you seen some of the hats? Sometimes I've seen the wedding and the royal family, the huge feathers sticking out of their hat. Like, what is that? Is that a bird on your head? Yeah. So sometimes people wear some really funny things.
Yeah. And we think that's fine because it's fashion. You know, to be completely, wearing purple hair or whatever and odd types of hats and stuff. But why is it not okay to have a purple scarf? To have a scarf on our head? Why? Purple hair is fine, but purple scarves are not. So that shows you that there are some forces out there, Zainab, that are making us think negatively about hijab. And that is why carrying the hijab is a burden for us. It feels heavy for us. See, when one feels negatively about the load, it feels that much more heavier. And when one doesn't believe in the worthiness of the load, when one thinks, it's just, not a nice thing, or one, God forbid, feels that their master, God, is being cruel to them, then yes, the load will feel heavy. But when something is something you like making a sandcastle or carrying something very heavy, but you're doing it because you want to help, you want to do something good. Have you ever carried something very heavy even though it was too heavy for you?
Yeah, sometimes I help my mom with my baby brother Hadi. He's so heavy. He's almost as tall as me now. And when I carry him, his legs drag on the floor. And I'm like, Ooh, but I carried him because mommy, I want to help her. And then she feels so happy. She's like, oh, you're such a good girl and all that. And I do it because I want to make my mom happy. I want to help her and I want to be a good girl. And I want to make Allah happy. So, oh, I understand. Auntie, I understand now. So if you like the thing that you are doing, it doesn't feel so heavy anymore. If you love the person you're doing it for, it doesn't feel so heavy anymore. Then you do it with lots of faith and energy and hope. So if I love Allah, then I won't find it hard to do.
Yeah. And you know what? There was one day a lady who had come to see Bibi Fatima Zahra, salamullah alayha. And
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
yeah, and Bibi Fatima alayha salam was answering questions of this old lady. The old auntie and her daughter were there. But the auntie kept asking more and more and more questions, the elderly auntie. And so her daughter got really embarrassed. She was like, I'm so sorry, Bibi Fatima. My mom's asking so many questions and we're tiring you out. We're taking so much of your time. We're so sorry. And Bibi Fatima alayha salam replied, she said, if somebody gives you a very heavy load to carry it to the top of a mountain, and it's very heavy and it's hot and it's troubling you and it's so difficult, but you know that when you get to the top of the mountain, you're going to get lots of rewards for what you did. You're going to get so many rewards. Would you do it? The lady answered, yes, I sure would. If I'm going to get something out of doing that work, I'll surely do it. Bibi Fatima alayha salam replied, that's the same with me giving you my time and answering your questions, because I know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be pleased with me and will reward me for this effort. And so, Zainab, when we wear hijab and we know it's hard, sometimes, yes, we also want to swim when everybody's swimming. And we also want to wear some of those nice clothes that we have to wear only with other ladies around. We can't wear it with men there. It's really, really hard, and it's a jihad. It's a struggle. Absolutely, I agree. But when you do it knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be happy with you, you do it so happily that it doesn't pinch you anymore. It doesn't bother you. You don't feel the heat. You also don't feel those desires in your heart. You're able to say, it's okay, Allah will be happy. Allah is going to give me a lot of sawab for this. And see, one of the main reasons we think of hijab as a burden is because of the media.
What's media? Media.
Media means newspapers, articles in the newspaper or in a magazine or on the internet or movies, anything that is out there to give a message. The media gives negative stories about people wearing hijab. They say negative things and bad things about Islam. There's sometimes policies that governments have that are against Islam and make Islam look bad. There's stereotypes and propaganda against our faith and about how women are treated. When one is constantly bombarded with these messages again and again, they come at you that women are oppressed and women are being, forced to do this and that the hijab is an unattractive thing. And when the world tells you that it is beautiful to wear few clothes, and that the more you wear clothes, the more uncool you are, that is when you realize that the negative messages are the reasons we find our hijab so much of a burden sometimes. You know, Zainab, I'm one of those people who wore hijab later in my life. I didn't wear it when I was a little girl like you, and I wish that I had. But sometimes it's because we didn't have anyone to tell us that, do this. And I'm so glad that you are thinking about this so early. You need to go to madrasa. You need to listen and learn about Islam. You need to have your parents really tell you. And sometimes it's hard when parents tell us. We feel like, I don't want to listen. But they're doing this because they have a responsibility to teach us about our faith. And when we see these stereotypes about what women who are wearing hijab are like, that they're uneducated or they're not beautiful or whatever that they say about women who wear hijab, we have to fight that. We have to say, no. No, 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 I'm not gonna believe this because I know hijab is a good thing.
So, okay, so you're saying that hijab is not a burden, and if I put my mind to it, I can do it? You mean I can actually wear this at school, and even if people whisper and ask me strange questions and maybe laugh at me, that I can be brave?
You sure can. Hijab makes us brave. And the beautiful thing is, it makes us brave not for some ulterior motive, not for us to be happy. It makes us brave because we want to make Allah happy. And when we do that, Allah makes us stronger. Allah gives us all the strength. And you know what? Sometimes we human beings, we underestimate our own ability, and we also make things too scary. Sometimes we think the whole world's gonna laugh at us. Then nobody will laugh. Believe me, when I wore hijab, I was older. And when I went to school, I thought everyone's going to point fingers at me and look at me and ask me questions. And I had all these answers ready. And that's what you have to do. Be ready with answers, not angry answers, but answers that have some explanation, that have knowledge in them. And so that you can answer these questions without, looking uninformed about why you're wearing it. However, I found nobody asked me. Nobody asked me, because nowadays people know a lot about hijab. They know. They have also researched. So often Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it so easy for us. And also, I thought that I would be hot, or I would be uncomfortable, or I would be scared, or I would be nervous. But you know what, Zainab? I felt so peaceful. I wasn't scared at all. And that's when I realized, we sometimes talk ourselves into feeling something is stressful and hard. We say it's too difficult, it's too heavy, I can't do it, I'm not that religious, oh, I'm a lost case, oh, I could never do this, oh, now I'm too old, what good is it now, Allah will not accept it, I spent my whole life doing all these things. We often talk ourselves out of doing a good thing, but also shaitan, he makes it easier to disobey Allah and tells us, oh, yeah, you can't do this, you can't do this. But we can. I'll tell you, my daughter, when she was about 10 years old, she joined something, and it was something about a marathon. She was a 10-year-old girl. She was only 60 pounds.
Oh my God, 10-year-old running a marathon, and she was only 60 pounds? How fast did she have to run? And where did she run? And what did she do?
Well, that's a totally different and long story, but she was basically raising money for charity, and they had to run 5 kilometers. And she was with some friends of hers, and they trained for 6 weeks. 6 weeks they kept running and practicing till they got better and better and better. In the beginning, they were getting all, sweaty and exhausted. They could not even run half a mile. But then they got better and better and better. Then they were running 1K, 2K, 3K, 4K, 5K. And when I stood there and I watched her running, I was like, oh my God. I was there watching her when she ran around that track. And I thought, subhanallah, even I can't do what she did. Wow, how does a 10-year-old know how to run so fast and so easily she did it? Then I realized it is because she exercised, right? She made herself become stronger and stronger. And that's what we need to do. We need to constantly practice. We need to raise the bar. So every time you can do something, you can jump over something, you raise the bar so you can jump higher. And you have to constantly surround yourself with motivating messages. Talk to people who have worn hijab and ask them how they feel and how hard it is, or was it easy. Also, find some nice hijabs to wear so that you can enjoy the colors, match them, but always be careful that it doesn't become just another way of beautifying yourself, because sometimes we go a little bit overboard even with our hijab, and then it just becomes a fashion accessory with so much makeup on and so many hours to make ourselves pretty wearing the hijab, that then it kind of defeats the purpose. So inshallah, this will not feel a burden, Zainab. And it's all about how you carry it, not how heavy the burden is. Sometimes people are able to really carry something heavier than even themselves. Have you ever seen those people lifting weights? They can lift heavy weights.
Oh, I've seen my dad. He raises, he goes to the gym, right? And then he lifts these heavy weights, and they're so heavy. And sometimes like, I can see him shaking. Yeah, I can see him. He's like, and I'm like, oh my god, he's gonna blow. He's gonna fall. He's gonna blow. But he can't. He doesn't blow. He goes. And then he drops it on the ground and goes, yay, I did it. So, yeah, you're right. We can carry heavy loads, even those that are heavier than us sometimes.
Yes, inshallah. You will, and this will not be a load at all. It's not a burden. It's a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what's most beautiful is not only is it mentioned in the Quran that we have to wear it, that so we're obeying Allah, but we're also dressing like Bibi Fatima to Zahra salamullah alayha and Bibi Zainab, whose name you have. Yes, and all the ladies of Islam. Going to dress like them because that shows us what a Muslim woman should look like. And inshallah, we'll all try and wear the hijab, and inshallah make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala very happy and proud of us, and then he'll bless us. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل ورجهم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My dear brothers and sisters, if we are ready for today's session, let's have a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad for the love of Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali. Last day we spoke about Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. We spoke about some of the contributions of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. How the Imam alayhi salam would sit with many different people of different ideas, of different sects, religions, philosophies, those that didn't even believe in a religion whatsoever, atheists. And we said that the Imam alayhi salam welcomed all of them, discussed with all of them, and ultimately was able to disprove all of them and all of their theories. Of those people were Abu Hanifa, the prominent Sunni scholar that has a madhab, a sect of jurisprudence under his name. Another, for example, is Abu Shakir, who was a prominent atheist at the time. And others like them. And we said that the Imam alayhi salam devoted his life to spreading the teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. But at his final moments in this world, when he had the chance to say his final words, he didn't mention the debates, the discussions. He didn't come to his family and say, learn the knowledge of Ahlul Bayt and spread it. He didn't speak about knowledge in his last moments. He spoke about salat. And he said, لا ينال or لا تنال شفاعتنا مستخفا بالصلاة. The one who belittles salat, our intercession does not reach him. And the reason for this, we said, is that the human being in his last moments speaks about what is most important to him, and usually what he devoted or she devoted their entire lives for. Which means the Imam alayhi salam, in his pursuit of knowledge, or teaching knowledge rather, the Imam alayhi salam was not merely doing it just for the knowledge itself. Rather, there was an underlying goal, and that is the ibadah, the salat. Getting close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Today, my brothers and sisters, we are going to segue into the life of Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam. The life of Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam is full of lessons, but also full of sorrows and tragedies. Why? The Imam alayhi salam had to endure a lot of pain. The Imam alayhi salam had to endure a lot of betrayal and a lot of deception, or attempts at deceiving the Imam or deceiving the Shias from the Abbasid Khulafa, and even from some of the family members of the Imam alayhi salamullah. The Imam alayhi salam had many qualities, many attributes that me and you can learn from and analyze. But of the qualities that this Imam alayhi salam showed was his denouncing of this world. Some of us, my brothers and sisters, come and say, the ahadith of Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam seem to speak down at the world and say that the world, this dunya around us, is inherently evil. When the fact of the matter is, my brothers and sisters, the philosophy of Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam is not this. Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam don't teach us that the world is inherently evil. As in, evil is the world, and the world is equal, or is evil. They equal each other. This is not the philosophy of Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam. Rather, Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam come and tell us that this dunya is the harvesting ground for al-akhirah. It's like a piece of land. Take it like this. This is a beautiful example that the Imams alayhim salam give. The world is like a piece of land. If you leave this land and don't care for it, are you going to get beautiful roses and fruits coming from this land, growing out of the land? Or are you going to get weeds and sometimes dangerous plants, or plants that hide snakes and dangerous animals within them? If you leave the land and don't care for it, it's not going to give you something that you can benefit from. Rather, it's going to be a danger for you. But if you take care of that land and you're wary, you put a fence around that land, you take care of it. If you see a weed, you take it out. You spray it, whatever. I'm not a farmer. I don't know what they do to the land to keep it good. But you take care of the land. You take care of the land. Ultimately, you're going to find what benefits you in that land. The Imams alayhim salam said, the world, this dunya, is like a snake. And that snake harbors poison. But usually, the snakes that have poison are the most colorful. This is in the hadith of Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam. Usually, the snakes that have the poison are the most colorful ones. They are the ones that if you look at, you want to look at. And you want to keep looking at them. If they're brown or black and they don't really look nice, you see them and you stay away from them. But the ones that have nice bright colors, those are the ones that catch your attention. This world is like that. It has ornaments. It has decorations. And those that are willing to accept the dunya and not be careful, be mesmerized by it, and not take heed to its dangers, are going to be bitten by it. Are going to be bitten by it. That snake that is colorful, if you're just watching it, but you're from far away, just watching it from far away, and you're taking heed to it, you're more or less staying away from it. You're being careful of it, but you're watching it and seeing it, admiring its beauty, but from far, it's not going to hurt you. But if right when you get close to it, it's going to spring up and it's going to bite you. That's the dunya, my brothers and sisters. And the dunya, my brothers and sisters, is not a danger that happens little by little. It's not like a disease that takes over the body little by little, step by step. Just like the snake, it pounces on you. It springs quickly. The dunya, my brothers and sisters, is not like the disease that takes time to destroy the human being. No. Just like the snake. Just like the snake that can pounce or spring and bite you very, very quickly. And after that bite, the onset of the different symptoms that come with poison are very quick. And death is very quick. This is how the dunya works. And so the Imams alayhimus salam, when they denounced the dunya, they didn't say denounce it because it's evil. Rather, stay away from it because you may not be strong enough. You may not be strong enough to fight off the desires, the ornaments, the decorations of the dunya. And so you found the Imams of Ahl al-Bayt alayhimus salam denounce it. Imam Ali alayhi salam, in his famous words, he says, O dunya, ghurri ghayri. Find someone else to lead astray. Find someone else to lead astray. I have divorced you 3 times. There's no coming back. There's no coming back for you. That's it. I've denounced you. And Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam lived by this philosophy. One of the companions, one of the narrators of hadith by the name of Ibrahim ibn Abdul Hamid, he says, I visited the Imam. And when I entered the Imam's house, or the room that he used to pray in, the room that he used to stay in, what did he say? He said, I saw nothing except a basket, a sword that was hung on the wall or hung on some place, and a copy of the Quran. Shaykh al-Qarashi, he says, the Imam alayhi salam lived a simple life. Very simple life. And even the furniture that the poor people had in their homes, the Imams alayhi salam, or the Imam alayhi salam rather, did not have. Very, very simple life. And so you found that when the Imam alayhi salam was taken to the prison of Harun al-Rashid, he didn't find that prison to be a jail cell. Rather, he found that prison to be his Jannah, his heaven. It was a small place, no problem. No problem. But even that small, tight jail cell, he was able to convert it into his heaven. Not because it was actually heaven, rather it was a living hell. But the Imam alayhi salam, his insight, his outlook, made it into his heaven. And so you find this hadith narrated. Listen to what happened. It said Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam was in the jail cell of Harun al-Rashid. And Harun al-Rashid was trying to break the Imam, break him at all costs. He found that when he put the Imam in jail, the Imam alayhi salam would pray and supplicate. He couldn't break the Imam alayhi salam when it came to his spirit. But what he thought he can do is break the Imam when it came to his morality. So what did he do? It said he found his most beautiful servant in the entire castle or in the entire kingdom, the most beautiful servant he can get his hands on. And he told one of his men, take this servant to Al-Kadhim, to Musa ibn Ja'far, and offer her to the Imam. Offer her to Musa ibn Ja'far as a servant in his jail cell. She will do as he wants, whatever he wants. He wants food, she will get him food. He wants water, he'll get him water. She will get him water, etc., etc. Harun al-Rashid's man takes her down to the jail cell of the Imam alayhi salam. And he says, Harun has given you this slave or this servant. The Imam alayhi salam looks at him and he says, I don't want this slave. I don't want this slave. I don't need her. They return. When Harun al-Rashid sees that the Imam alayhi salam declines, he says to his man, we brought him here without his choice. We forced him to be here. And we're going to force this woman to stay in his cell, whether he likes it or not. And so, they put the woman in the cell and they close the door. The Imam alayhi salam is in prostration and sujood. He gets up and he looks at the woman. She says to him, "O Master, do you need anything? I'm here to do as you please." The Imam alayhi salam says, "What do I need you here for when I have this?" He points to a corner in the cell, or a direction in the cell. And she says that when I looked into that corner, when I looked in that direction, I saw a garden where I could not see the end of it. A garden so big that I couldn't see the end of that garden. Around the Imam, there were those serving him, servants, whose faces were so beautiful. So beautiful, I've never seen like them. In their hands, they had silver. They were wearing silk. She began to describe them the same way that the Quran describes the servants in Jannah. The riwayah says, the jailer comes back and finds the Imam in sujood and the servant in sujood. He takes the servant back to Harun al-Rashid. She tells him of what she saw. Harun al-Rashid orders her to be jailed as well, in a different cell. The riwayah says this woman that was willing to do the worst of things, just for Harun al-Rashid to be happy and satisfied, to obey Harun al-Rashid, would be in prostration, in supplication, in salat, the entire time, and would not get up. And when she was asked, why is she doing this? What caused her to change? You know what she said? She said, I saw Al-Abd Salih doing this, and so I do it. I saw the righteous slave doing this, and so I do like he does. Meaning Al-Kadhim. The jail cell was a heaven for the Imam. Heaven and hell in this world, my brothers and sisters, is not about what you have or don't have. It's about the outlook. Are you content with what you have, or are you not content? If you are content, then you can have nothing, and you'll be happy. If you're not content, then you can have the riches of the world, but you will be the poorest person in the world. This is what the Imams alayhimus salam taught us. The Imams alayhimus salam didn't tell us to be poor. They told us to be successful. Did you know that the Imam alayhi salam, Imam al-Kadhib, had many lands, had many businesses, or had many ways to make money, whether that be through land or other endeavors, whether he had many businesses or not, but he had many different methods to make money. The Imam alayhi salam had assets, but he used those assets for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to give to the poor, to give back to the community. The Imam alayhi salam had money coming in from Shias, from the Shias, when they gave their khums, when they give their zakat, whatever it may be. He had money coming in, but still he lived the life of someone who had nothing, because he had heaven. His insight, his outlook gave him heaven before even stepping into Jannah itself. Content, my brothers and sisters, being happy with what you have, is the true meaning of being rich. And not being content is the true meaning of poverty. And this is what the Imam alayhi salam taught us. For the Imam alayhi salam, let's end off today's session with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Are our minds inherently rational or irrational? What do you think? This is one of the questions that is asked in Thinking Fast and Slow by Dr. Daniel Kahneman, the Nobel laureate, whose book has been recommended by people like Bill Gates, Ray Dalio, and a whole slew of other great thinkers. The book really looks into and goes into the depths of the human mind and actually looks at the different systems that exist in our mind. Are we rational? Are we irrational? The book can actually be thought of a summary of all of the life work of Dr. Daniel Kahneman, the Nobel laureate in economics. Let's dive right into the book and see what's going on. The first major idea in the book is that we have two systems in our brain, System 1 and System 2. System 1 is the part of our brain which is much more quick, fast, sudden, and System 2 is the one that is slower, more deliberate, and more rational. System 1 is what gets engaged when you hear a loud sound. When you hear a loud sound and react to it and focus your attention there, that's System 1. System 2 is what gets engaged when you're looking for someone in a crowd, for example. In a crowd, you're scanning people's faces. You're scanning the different features, their clothes, their face, their hair, in order to find that particular individual that you're looking for. That's a slower, more deliberate process. System 1 is sudden, quick, fast. System 2 is slower, more deliberate, and allows us to do the more mathematical and statistical decision making. But which one is more powerful? Which one is more influential? Which one has more impact? Dr. Daniel Kahneman cites a little bit more insights before we actually get to that answer. For example, Dr. Daniel Kahneman suggests that our minds are lazy by default. Take this example. A bat and a ball, together, they cost $1.10. Also, the bat costs $1 more than the ball. What is the cost of the ball? Did you get that? Many people answer this question by saying the cost of the ball is 10 cents. And the reality of the matter is, if you set this problem up algebraically and mathematically, you would have realized that the actual cost of the ball cannot be 10 cents. Otherwise, your total would have been $1.20, because we said that the bat costs $1 more than the ball. And therefore, the answer is actually 5 cents. If you had a ball that's 5 cents and $1 more than that is $1.05 for the bat, you add those two together and you get $1.10. This is one of the examples of how the mind becomes lazy and tries to answer. Dr. Daniel Kahneman says that this is System 1 operating. System 1 is trying to answer this question for you because it thinks it can do it. Whereas actually System 2 should be answering this question, not System 1, because this is a more mathematical, statistical, analytical problem, which is much better suited for System 2. Yet, this example permeates throughout our life in many, many, many ways. This is called the law of least effort, and actually suggests that our minds are inherently lazy and look for the least effort way to get to solutions. The next major idea that Dr. Daniel Kahneman presents is that our minds function on autopilot much of the time. Take the following example. The letters S, O, blank, P. What comes to mind? Did you eat today? Have you eaten yet? Are you about to eat? Have you taken a shower yet today? Do you plan to take a shower later? What's the word I asked again? S-O blank P? Did you say soup? Researchers find that if they actually suggest the term, for example, or say, have you eaten, or ask a question like this, the people are more likely to respond by saying S-O-U-P, or soup. Or if I ask you, did you take a shower today? You're much more likely to actually say S-O-A-P, or soap. This is a phenomenon called priming, and it happens in many, many ways in our mind every single day. Another example of this is when participants in a study were actually walking and they were told Florida and wrinkles. For those who may not be aware, Florida is considered the retirement capital of the United States and is associated with the elderly. So when people were told Florida and wrinkles, they actually began to walk slower than other people. This is the impact that priming can have on an individual. Another further example of this is seen throughout so many different ways and so many different aspects of our life. One of this is what Dr. Daniel Kahneman cites is money. When people are primed with the word money, they actually act much more self-centric. They act much more focused on themselves rather than other people. This is what the word money does to other people, just the same way that the word eat or food or the word shower does in the first case. So Dr. Kahneman says that it's very possible that being materialistic and money focused in our society is having an entirely cultural impact on our society, one where we are totally focused on ourselves rather than on others. Further cognitive biases that Dr. Kahneman highlights are the halo effect. The halo effect is where we take one aspect of an individual, one aspect of their life, and we broadcast that to every other aspect of their life. So for example, if someone's likable, we automatically think that they are qualified and they're able to do many other things which they may not be able to do. Another example which Dr. Daniel Kahneman gives is that of confirmation bias. This is when you already have, for example, a positive perception of someone, a positive first impression of someone, you automatically begin to assume that every other thing of them is good by default, although this may not be the case. The next major idea in the book is that Dr. Kahneman presents is that of heuristics or shortcuts. Heuristics or shortcuts are shortcuts that our mind makes in order to get to certain conclusions. In many cases, heuristics are actually very helpful and they can help us in many ways. But there are two particular instances, as an example, where our minds operate on shortcuts and they may not be very helpful to us. Number one, the substitution heuristic, and number two, the availability heuristic. The substitution heuristic or shortcut is where our minds actually substitute an easier question in place of a more important question. Take, for example, a political candidate who's running for office. The real question you should be asking, or the mind should be asking, is this person qualified for the job? Whereas our minds substitute that question with the question, do I like this person, or is this person likable? And do they look like they would do good in this job? And if they look like they would do good in this job, our mind automatically says they must do good in this job. This is called the substitution effect, where we substitute one question with an easier question. This can obviously lead to irrational decision making. The other is called the availability heuristic. The availability heuristic is what is in front of me and what is available to me is more overweighted in my mind. For example, what's more common in our world? Accidents, car accidents, for example, or strokes, medical strokes. Well, in a country like the United States, medical strokes are much, much more common than car accidents. Yet, 80% of people who were polled and asked about what they think is more common, they thought that 80% felt that car accidents are much more common than strokes. The reason for this, Dr. Kahneman argues, is the availability heuristic. Our mind makes the shortcut because the news always shows us that there's an accident that's been that's happened, and therefore that's available to us, and we think that that is much more common than, for example, a stroke, which medically and statistically happens much more often. Obviously, this can lead to another sort of cognitive bias in terms of our decision making, and it's important to be mindful of this. The next major idea which Dr. Daniel Kahneman presents in terms of his research in the world of psychology is how we remember past events. And interestingly, we don't remember past events the way they actually occurred. We actually remember past events in the way our mind remembers them. The reason for this is a fewfold. We actually have two forms of memory. One is our experiencing self, the other is our remembering self. The experiencing self asks the question, how do I feel? The remembering self looks at the situation in overall. How did this situation go overall? And in between these two, the more powerful one is the remembering self. And the reason for that is twofold. What's something called duration neglect, which actually makes us neglect and forget the overall duration of an event in the past. And the other one is called peak end rule. That is, that when something happens at the end, we put more emphasis on it. So duration neglect, it doesn't look at the whole picture of how long something took place. It neglects the whole duration. And the other is the peak end rule, that at the end, we put more weight at the end. An example of this that Dr. Kahneman cites is that of two groups of individuals who received colonoscopies. One group was given a longer, more sustained pain, and the second group was given a shorter, but at the end they were given an uptick of pain. The researchers found that after some time, when they were asked, the second group, the one that was given a shorter duration of pain, but at the end they got an uptick of pain, they said that the overall experience, it felt worse. They actually felt that they had endured much more pain than the first group. This is what our mind does in terms of memories. We think that things did not take place as long as they did, and many times we think that what happened at the end is how we judge the rest of the entire experience, even if the rest of the experience may have been very good. This is just one of the several ways that our minds make cognitive biases day to day. Some more, for example. What if I told you that 10% of people commit violence? What if I told you that out of every 100 people, 10 out of every 100 people commit violence? Which one's going to have more impact on you? Well, research shows that the second situation, where I said 10 out of every 100 people commit violence, that has a much more greater impact on you than 10%. Although in principle, in theory, they're exactly the same number. There's no difference. But our minds interpret the data very differently. The next major idea, which is towards the main culmination of the book, is Dr. Daniel Kahneman's immense contribution to the field of economics, for which he won the Nobel Prize, in which Dr. Daniel Kahneman highlighted that the fundamental assumption in economics before his work was that human beings act rationally. This is based on utility theory in economics. Utility theory says that we human beings make rational decisions all the time. And based on that, we make the logical decision. Dr. Daniel Kahneman, in his theory of prospect theory from psychology, applying that psychology to economics, found that we as human beings actually don't make the rational decision. Consider two individuals, both who are millionaires and have $1 million. In utility theory of traditional economics or classical economics, we would assume they both have the same level of happiness. Whereas in prospect theory, or the new theory from Dr. Daniel Kahneman of behavioral economics, you would find that the question of how they got their income has a big impact on their happiness. One individual may have inherited the money, and the other one may have worked very hard to achieve it. This has a big impact on the overall result and the happiness. There are several other examples of this in the world of economics, and this boils down to how do we as human beings make decisions? The contribution of Dr. Daniel Kahneman to the field of economics actually applies to all of us, and not just the field of economics. The reason is because we all make decisions on a day-to-day basis, whether we realize it or not. We are making economic decisions of rationality and many times irrationality based on how our minds operate. So next time you're making a decision, consider, is your mind making a cognitive bias? Are you suffering from the halo effect? Is system 1 operating? Is system 2 operating? Which aspect or which part of the brain is operating? And when you start to think and reflect on this, you'll be able to make much more rational decisions. This has been a summary of Thinking Fast and Slow by Dr. Daniel Kahneman. The book is voluminous and it has a lot of data in it and a lot of information. And of course, we're not able to cover all of it here. But I hope this has inspired you to just look into this book a bit more and see what insights you can glean from it in order to get a better understanding of how our minds work and operate, and how system 1 in the brain and system 2 in the brain work, so that we can make more rational decisions and not be lazy or operate on a perspective of autopilot. I hope this has been beneficial to you, and I hope that you'll be inspired to read the book a bit more and gain some more insights so that you can chart the journey of your life with success and make the best possible decisions. Best of luck to you.
بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين أما بعد فقد قال الله عز وجل في كتابه المجيد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وإذا ضربتم في الأرض فليس عليكم جناح أن تقصروا من الصلاة إن خفتم أن يفتنكم الذين كفروا إن الكافرين كانوا لكم عدوا مبينا صدق الله العلي العظيم. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordained the prayer, He made some allowances, and one of those allowances is that we are to shorten all the 4 rak'ah prayers into 2 rak'ah when we are traveling. And this is what we call taqsir or qasr. And where the conditions are fulfilled, we have no choice. We must offer the shortened prayers. And this is of course only relevant to the 4 rak'ah prayers, the prayers of 2 rak'ahs or 3 rak'ahs. They will stay as they are whether you are traveling or not. And what are the conditions that make taqsir necessary? Firstly, there must be a journey of 8 farsakh which is intentional. And 8 farsakh equates to approximately 28 miles or 44 kilometers in total. So if a journey that one intends to take takes that it's to a place that is 14 miles away, this will meet the conditions as the total journey going there and coming back will be 28 miles. It needs to be intended. This masafa shar'iyya, this requisite distance for taqsir must be intended, and the intention must continue throughout the journey. If someone is going out chasing someone or following someone or looking for someone, and he doesn't know how long he's going to do this and how much of a distance he will cover, then this is not an intentional journey of 8 farsakh, and therefore he will not do taqsir. He will complete all of his prayers during that journey. So it must be an intentional journey of 8 farsakh. And the measurement of 8 farsakh will begin from the boundaries of the city, of the town, the edge of the town, not his house, not the Hadd Tarakhus, which we'll go into later, but from the edge of the town where he sees the last houses that are deemed to be a part of your town, and that is the edge of that town, and that is when you will start measuring the 8 farsakh, the 44 kilometers. And this will be until the actual destination. But if the destination is another of your hometowns, a place that you can call home or call your watan, then you will calculate the distance from the edge of your town to the edge of that town. This is the first condition. The second condition is none of the things that discontinue a journey occurs before the journeying of the 44 kilometers is completed. So if one of these 3 things happen, before a person reaches 44 kilometers, and he knows this will happen, he will not do taqsir. He will pray incomplete during that journey. Firstly, if he is passing by and stopping by at one's hometown, if he is leaving his town, going by another town, which is also his watan, his hometown, if he is just passing by and just stopping there for a while, as long as he's stopping there, then that journey has been discontinued, and he has to start counting anew if he wants to continue, and he needs to see whether the 8 farsakh is complete in the subsequent journey. Number 2, if he intends to stay at a place for at least 10 days, if he comes across such a place where he's going to stay for at least 10 days, then that discontinues a journey. And thirdly, when he stays at a place before reaching 44 kilometers and he passes 30 days there and he remains undecided, unresolved about whether he wants to stay or not, if 30 days pass, then he will be required to start completing his prayers there, and his journey would be discontinued. The third condition for taqsir, for offering shortened prayers, is that the journey is permitted in the Sharia, or it's for a permitted cause. If you are traveling somewhere, for instance, to gamble or to do anything else that is haram, then that journey, however long it is, however hours you're traveling, however miles that you'll be traveling, you will be required to offer the full prayers, because this allowance is not applicable to you. Number 4, the condition for taqsir and for the shortening of the prayer is that one is not kathirul safar, or anyone whose home remains with him, as will be explained tomorrow, inshallah. And the 5th condition is that he passes by a point that we call hadd al-tarakhus after having left the boundaries of the town. He gets to a point called hadd al-tarakhus where he cannot any longer see the people of the town, and the people of the town can no longer see him. So it's that distance from the town, 2 or 3 kilometers maybe, and one cannot start shortening the prayers until he passes by this point. And if one isn't sure whether or not he has passed this point and he stops to pray, then he will continue to offer the full prayers until he passes by this point. This isn't the point which is the edge of the city. The edge of the city is where you'll start counting and measuring the miles and the kilometers. This is a point further down the road. The scholars say maybe between 2 and 3 kilometers. It could be more, it could be less, but one must be sure that at that point, the distance is such that I cannot see the people of the town, and they can't see me because of the distance, not due to any other things such as the trees or the hills or buildings. So with these conditions there, a person must be shortening his prayers. His 4 rak'ah prayers will be shortened, and of course his 2 rak'ah and his 3 rak'ah prayers will remain the way they are. And as mentioned, there are 3 things that will break a journey, that will discontinue a journey, and if they occur before the completion of the 8 farsakh, the 44 kilometers, then qasr is not permitted during that journey. And if they occur after the 8 farsakh, then during these breaks there is no qasr. A person will have to offer the full prayers. The first of these occurrences is passing by a hometown, a watan, a place where he is originally from. Okay, maybe he was born there and maybe his parents still live there, but it's a place that he's still attached to. He hasn't abandoned that place. A watan can be a place where he lives and it's become his home. He wishes to live there for the foreseeable future or for the long term, such that he is seen to be of that town, and when he leaves that town he is seen to be a traveler. So any such place will be his hometown, his watan, and they can be numerous. You can have a place where you live a part of the year, another place where you live in another part of the year, and a place where your parents live, and then there's another place maybe where you were born and that's your original town, your town that you are attached to and you haven't abandoned, and you wish to be buried there, for instance, and you wish to retire there. So a person can have a number of hometowns and watans. Now, if he passes by such a place and he stops there, then that journey is discontinued. But if he doesn't stop there, he just passes by and he just stops for a couple of minutes just to offer the prayers, then he will, any 4 rak'ah prayer, he will offer twice in its complete form and also as qasr. But then when he substantially stops, sees someone, visits someone, and do something that one can say that he has done nuzul there. He has gotten out of his vehicle and he has left the vehicle and he has stopped there to do something there more than just a couple of minutes, then that will be nuzul, and there he will need to complete his prayers and the journeying has stopped. So if before that he has covered less than 44 kilometers, then he will need to count again from there onwards. So this is the first thing that will discontinue a journey. The second thing is that if a person intends to stay at a place anywhere on the route, which is not his hometown, for 10 days. So if he intends this iqama and this residence there for 10 days, he will complete all of his prayers there. And if he travels to outside the town during the 10 days, if it's just the outskirts of the town and the attachments around it or adjacent to it, then the 10 days will continue and he will not, those 10 days will not discontinue. Similarly, if a person goes further out beyond the Hadd al-Tarakhus of that town, but less than the 22 kilometers, for a few hours, for example, if he's gone to Najaf, he intends to stay there for 10 days, but then he wants to go to Kufa, he wants to go to another place which is less than 22 kilometers, because he needs to go there and then come back, which will make 44 kilometers. And it's just for a few hours, but not the whole day or anything close to the whole day, then it is fine as well. He can go and travel there, come back, and he can continue the counting of the 10 days. However, if it is beyond 22 kilometers, or he stays out of town for a longer period, then that 10-day period will come to an end, and he will start praying qasr unless he then has a new intention to stay in Najaf or whatever town he is staying at for 10 days or more. And finally, if someone stays at a particular place without the intention of staying there for 10 days, but he continues to stay there, and it gets to 10 days, and then 20 days, and then 30 days. Once it has been 30 days, he remains undecided, unresolved of what to do, continue, go back, stay there. Then his journey has ended, and the rules of someone who arrives at a place intending to stay there for 10 days will apply to him, as already mentioned. And there are 4 places in which a person has a choice. If he is a traveler, if he's not staying there for 10 days, in which case he has to offer the full prayers. But if he's just there for a few days, less than 10 days, he's a traveler, then in those places he has a choice of either offering the full prayers or the shortened prayers. The city of Makkah al-Mukarramah, the city of al-Madinah al-Munawwara, and the holy city of Kufa, anywhere in the city that is seen to be a part of the city, he has a choice, and it's better to offer the full prayers. And finally, if it's within 11.5 meters of the holy shrine of Sayyid al-Shuhada, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. So if the Darih is there and you are praying within 11.5 meters of the holy shrine, then you can offer full prayers there, even if you are traveling, even if you're there only for the day or only for a few days. And if you are traveling, if you are a traveler, which means you're not staying there in any of these places for 10 days, that is the case. But if you are not a traveler, then you will have to, of course, offer the complete prayers, and the option will not be there for you. These are a few rules of the traveler. Inshallah, in the next session, we'll have a look at who is deemed to be Kathiru Safar, whether that label applies to us or not. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين.